Hey everyone, welcome back to Pine Hollow out of Diagnostics. We have a fun one today. 2003 GMC Sierra 1500 V8. Customer complaint is crank no start. But if you bump the key twice, you take it out, you leave it for a minute, then apparently it fires right up. Craziest symptoms ever. What is what's been done? Well, it's at a shop here, but the owner, before he brought it over, you can see some parts, all ignition coils, spark plugs, wires. He said there was some rodent damage back here by the cam sensor wiring. Interesting splice job there. I see some kind of aftermarket throttle body spacer on there for extra performance. I have no idea what that would do. But let's start from scratch. So, since it's easy to do, let me just put on a fuel pressure gauge. Make sure we have good fuel pressure just to rule that off off the bat. Plug in a scanner, scan it for codes, see if we can get this thing started. All right, there's our fuel pressure. Holding steady. I'm just going to bleed the air out. And we'll prime it again. Looks good. Let me jump in here, do a health report, and then we'll try to crank it. Hey, electrical tape. There's the check engine light hiding. Okay, so we have some oxygen sensor codes. Bank 1 sensor 1 insufficient activity. Bank 2 sensor 1 insufficient activity. And then heater performance bank 2 sensor 2 and generator L terminal circuit. Okay, that's all we have there. Let's clear all these out. Also the oxygen sensors are all new apparently. I don't know what brand, where they're from. Just want to start from scratch. If this thing acts up, does it set any fresh new codes? We'll go hop right into powertrain system. Okay, no codes there. And let's look at some live data. So what do we want to see? Definitely want to see if the cam sensor is counting up. I don't know if engine data 1 would have that. Camshaft signal input, high to low, low to high. Engine coolant temp. Definitely want mass airflow. So let me pull up these trims or data PIDs and we'll see what's going on. Alright, so I'm going to crank it. We'll see what happens. Everything's at 0. TPS, if I press the TPS down, the data is very slow on class 2. Maybe we should use the Veris for quicker data. Refresh rate 169 on the IAC. And it fired right up. We had the key on for a while. Let's see what happens. Seems to run pretty smooth. Cam is counting up. We'll wait for the fuel trims to kick in. I mean, it seems to run just fine. It's charging, 14.5 volts. I was hoping it wouldn't start. Let's see if we shut it off. Turn it on. Okay. Customer complaint confirmed. So fired right up and then nothing. Fuel pressure is good. During cranking. Okay, excellent. I like it. So nothing really abnormal here. Our cam sensor is counting up. Everything's good. Read fault code. No fault codes. Okay, so this one's going to be more fun. We have no clues from the scanner. It's definitely a crank no start right now. But when it did fire up, it fired up perfectly. Pretty interesting. Okay, now the next quick check I want to do is the main ground for all these ignition coils, because that will not set a code. If the ignition coils lose the ground, the computer doesn't know that they lost the ground. Common issue on these older LS engines, the V8s. So let's just double check that while we're cranking if we have a good ground on there. So 2.4 millivolts right here. You can see that. And let's crank it. 44 millivolts. No problems. About 200 millivolts max. So shut it off. Turn it on. Okay, very neat. So each time I have the key off for like a minute, it does fire right up. How do you explain that? How do you explain that? And when it runs, it seems to run just fine. But you shut it off, you can't restart it for almost a minute. That is bizarre. That is crazy. I've never seen this symptom before. So place your bets now. Like, what is it going to be? This is pretty neat. From 2000. Look at this. Original sticker. 1518. Our trucks haven't gotten that much more efficient. 32 grand. Locking rear differential. That's cool. Love it. Okay, this is extremely interesting. Look at all the oxygen sensors. They're stuck at the bias voltage. Half a volt. Fuel trims are 0. It's running in open loop. It's running perfectly fine. So that's a clue. The oxygen sensors are completely dead in the water. You would think that the upstreams would heat up even if the heater was bad. But that's why I was throwing the insufficient activity. How does a truck run so well in open loop? This is pretty crazy. It's not setting codes for heater circuit? Like, it's not setting codes for anything? No DTCs. It's charging fine. This is looking more and more like a computer problem, honestly. We can unplug an oxygen sensor and just do a bypass test. Just send voltage down the signal and see if it responds. But this computer isn't even trying to go into closed loop. We can see how the heaters are turned on and off. How bizarre. Alright, so here's an interesting observation. So I shut it off, and if you try to restart it right away, nothing, right? If I shut it off and wait, until it like goes to sleep. So you don't need to wait a minute. You can just wait 15 seconds. Just wait 15 seconds. Cranks all day long. Shut it off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Fires right up. What if we shut it off and we turn the key back on and wait 10 seconds? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Nope. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Shut it off. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Shut it off. Let's wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I mean, cranks just fine. Why would that wait time have any effect on it? Fires right up. Fires right up. Huh. Some OBD2 data. Look, we're warmed up all the way. Engine RPM is 600 like it should be. Runs butter smooth. We're in open loop. Map is fine. All the trims are zeros, and I'm sure all the oxygen sensors here are going to be at the bias voltage. 0.45. All of them. All four. Should we take a look at the wiring diagram? I'm almost tempted to just unplug the computer, check for corrosion at the main, main plug, because what are the chances that all four oxygen sensors are just completely dead in the water? Open circuit, all four of them. Let's take a peek at the wiring diagram and then the computer. So looking at the wiring diagram for the oxygen sensors and the oxygen sensor heaters. So the heaters are just hot and runner start. Fuses go to the O2 sensors and then ground at G104. And then the actual sensor, both wires go to the computer, the low and the high, and apparently it's also grounded to the case of each sensor. So we can get to one sensor, easy to get to, and just send voltage and see if the PCM responds. Let's try that. We can check these heater fuses, key on, just to be 100% that they're good. Let's start with that. Okay, fuse box, O2A, O2B, key is on, test light to ground. Make sure the test light works. Make sure the key is on. Key is definitely on. Guys, check that out. We have nothing. Let me make sure the test light works. Yes, test light definitely works. Wait, now we're good. Will it start? Of course it'll start, yes. Okay, let's see if it... See, no start? Look, nothing. Nothing on that fuse. Nothing on the fuse. And now we're good. And now it'll start. Okay, that was really neat. Let's check again. Nothing on the fuse. Let's wait. Will the voltage come back? It's back. Let me keep a test light on here. When we crank this, this should not disappear. Let me just pop one of these fuses out and get test light in here. Alright, got a 4 amp bulb instead of the fuse there, so that should be more reliable. The ground is definitely solid. So they're on all the time. Let's see if it starts. No start. Off, on. Okay, so it must have been a problem with my test light. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then it fires like right up instantly, no questions asked. Test light stayed on. So that was not our problem. I think my test light had a poor ground. That drives home the point. You have to trust your equipment, but verify. If something doesn't seem right, get a different, substitute tool. Make sure your connections are good, and then do the experiment. So that wasn't a problem. Let's go after these oxygen sensor sensing circuits and see on the scanner if the data responds instantly when we pull up an oxygen sensor signal wire. Okay, so I have a wire, unplugged the bank 1 sensor 2, easiest one to get to. I have this red wire connected to the signal wire on the harness. So here are the 4 oxygen sensors, and bank 1 sensor 2 is up here, and if we touch this test light coming from battery positive, will that go up? Let's see. It absolutely does not. So that sensing circuit is dead. From the computer to these oxygen sensors. I'll prove that my test light has 12 volts on the tip. Right there. Let's see if the ground, if the signal ground is good. We can measure the voltage on here. So the real voltage on the signal wire is 4.3 volts. Does that make any sense? I thought it was supposed to be 0.45. That's really messed up. Let me pull it up with a test light. It goes to 12. So that's wrong. I know it's supposed to be half a volt. And the scan data should agree. Why is the scan data saying 0.45 and the meter saying 4.5? Right? We're 10 times higher. Completely bizarre. Let me relocate the red lead to the signal ground. We'll measure that and see if that's a good ground. 5 volts on the oxygen sensor signal ground wire. What the heck is going on? Obviously, it won't light my test light. Let me show you guys that. This is the signal ground. It goes up to 12, yes. 5 volts. So turn the key off. We'll wait till it times out. Computer should shut off. Boom, 0. It's really, really weird. On. 5 volts. Okay, that's a definite problem. We're going after this engine computer. That's not supposed to be there. Okay, so key on. We still have 5 volts on the oxygen sensor ground circuit. Messed up. Just for kicks, I unplugged the cam sensor here that was rewired with these weird splices. That's unplugged. Nothing changed. So next step is I want to undo these connectors at the engine computer. Make sure they don't have any weird crusties in there or whatever. We can do a little harness wiggle check. And then we'll check the actual grounds for the computer, because how does this make any sense? Alright, so everything on the engine computer looks absolutely mint and dry and clean, no crusties. let's look up the grounds for the engine computer and just quickly check those pins, make sure all the grounds are good, and then plug it back in. Alright, let's check the grounds on the PCM circuit. So I looked up the wiring diagram, and it shows there are 4 grounds. So right here, pin 1C1, 1C2, 40C1, and 40C2. And the actual connectors, C1 is the blue connector, so pin 1 is obviously in the corner. Pin 40 is the opposite corner, same row, and identical for C2. So let's find that black and white wires. There are 4 grounds. Let's check them all. Okay, test light from battery positive. If it finds a ground, it's going to light up. So I'm just looking for the corner black and white wire. So on the red one, it's going to be closer to the engine right here. And these pins are big enough that I can touch them with the tip of the test light, and sure enough, that's a good ground. And we know the opposite pin is going to be right here. Let's see if I can just get that in there. Yep, we have a good ground there. And then on the blue connector, it's going to be this lower pin right here. Yep, that's good. And same row, last pin over here, that's also good. So grounds are good on the engine computer. This is really blowing my mind. The oxygen sensor is supposed to be grounded through the case. So that wire, the ground wire on the harness should be low. Let's go back to the oxygen sensor and see if that's true. Alright, so on the tip of my test light I have 12 volts. If it finds a ground, it should light up. Let's go right to the oxygen sensor and see if it's grounded through the case. So this is the harness. The purple and white should be, I'm sorry, the tan and white should be the ground. That's going to be this gray pin right here. And it's not. The oxygen sensor is not grounded through the case. I mean, the sensor itself is ground, but maybe these sensors aren't meant to be on this truck. There's definitely a ground to the case on the diagram. That's not the case here. Maybe that's why they're all showing zeros. You have the wrong oxygen sensors, perhaps. That's crazy. How does it explain our no start? We can try just to ground this pin, you know, around the sensor and see if it makes any difference. Alright, so I plugged the PCM back in, and now I have my leads on both the power, or I'm sorry, the signal and the ground on the oxygen sensor harness side. Okay, so we can measure both voltages right here at the wheel. So we're measuring the ground voltage right now. We're back to that 5 volts. What if we pulled that down to ground safely through a test light? So my test light is grounded. You can see if I touch a positive, it's grounded. So let's pull this down. That didn't change the readings at all, but we're definitely 0 volts on the ground now. Let me get a second meter so we can measure the voltage on the signal wire and see if that starts responding. Alright, this is some crazy stuff. So I'm going to pull, I know this is a little confusing, so I got the second meter now on the signal wire measuring the voltage. So we have 4.5 on the signal, 4.9 on the ground. If I provide a ground to what's supposed to be a ground, check out what happens to the signal wire. 0.4. Okay, so that goes to 0, as it should. Test light's not lighting up, it's a sensor ground. That goes to 0.4, like we see on, and look, the scan data actually changed, 0.4 degrees. So these oxygen sensors are incorrect for this truck. Now, that's just one sensor. The other 3 are still messed up. So there's no way it's going to run correctly. Does that explain our weird long crank? Well, I'm not sure. Maybe all those 4 wires at the computer have to be grounded. We have to start with something good. You wouldn't think they're related, but look, it's happy. So let me rig up something a little more permanent here. We'll run the truck, see if at least this oxygen sensor comes back to life. Alright, let's fire it up, see what happens. Okay, fired right up. You can see our oxygen sensor is going to start responding, I'm sure. But I don't know if that computer is supposed to ground that wire or not. Okay, let's shut it off. Turn it on. No way. It's fired right up. It fired right up. This is insanity. Let's try again. Okay, good. It's still broken. Okay, fired up pretty quickly there. Let me run it for a little bit, see what happens. By the way, keep in mind this oxygen sensor is unplugged. We just provided a ground. Let's see. Turn it off. Turn it on. Nope. Fires right up on the second crank. I didn't do that before. It's a lot better. You don't have to wait a minute. This truck is possessed. But we need good oxygen sensors. What if we tie all the oxygen sensor grounds to ground and see what happens? We could try that just to prove the concept. But you're still going to need good oxygen sensors, like OEM or Denso or something. These are probably Amazon junk. I'm 99% sure. Look, now his cluster's out. There we go. Third crank. Interesting. I mean, perhaps you would think if it ran an open loop, could it follow the plugs a little bit? The ignition coils are aftermarket garbage. Yeah, we're going to need some known good parts before we go any further, because I could be here for another hour, but I don't want to charge the shop more time because we already know we have bad parts. So I'm going to tell them 4 OEM oxygen sensors, and if the owner has them, put the original ignition coils back on, for crying out loud. The truck only has 170,000 miles. Those ignition coils should last, 500,000 miles, no issues. Right there, it just fired right up, no problem. Is it fixed? I don't know. We just provided a ground. We could take the ground away and see if it, gets worse. We'll just unplug this. You're back to 4.5 volts on there. Maybe that was just the red herring. I don't. And we're back on scan data there. We should lose data pretty quickly once the computer goes to sleep. At least we diagnose his oxygen sensor codes. This seems to be a lot better now. Before it was a lot more reluctant to start. And the only thing we did is unplug the engine computer, plug it back in. Yeah, so I'm going to tell the shop, replace all the oxygen sensors with OEM, no questions asked, and then take it for a good drive, you know, set some monitors, and then see if this problem is still persistent or if it got a lot better. See if I press the gas down a little bit, see what happens. Alright, so when I press the gas a little bit, it's actually worse. Let me try that again. Press the gas down a little bit. We could hook up a scope to the ignition coils and an injector. That might be the last experiment I do to see if we're losing ignition or injector pulse when it acts up, and then versus when it's good. So many variables, and I tell them to take off that stupid throttle body spacer. Restore the truck back to stock. We have to do that. These poor Chevy trucks, they always suffer from the biggest parts cannons.